All right. Welcome once again to InterFaith Forward, Building New Bridges. I'm thankful that y'all are here. Once again, I want to emphasize that this is being recorded, the comments, the videos. So just giving that disclaimer, but also want to let you know the InterFaith office has a new YouTube page. So all of these sessions will be recorded and archived at our YouTube page. You can go on our website, the tab What's Happening, and then you'll see not just the link to Pitwire Live, but the link to our YouTube page, so you'll be able to see all of the recordings. Definitely want to give a shout out to Sharon, Graham, Ashley, to Stephen, the entire Office of Academic Ceremonies and University Events, Vice Chancellor Dr. Humphreys, and just the entire Pitwire Live team. As you all know, as I've been saying every session, this is just a virtual platform that we use to engage students, staff, faculty, community partners, everybody that's a part of the Pitt community, both local, regional, domestic, throughout the entire country, and even those who are abroad. We want to make sure that we engage you and keep you updated and just be able to create an atmosphere and a platform where you can be yourself. And all over Pitwire Live, there are different types of events and workshops going on, led by great teams of people. And this is really one that engages us in a more introspective way, in a faith-based way. I use the term worldview many times because many people don't ascribe to a traditional faith or philosophy, but they still have a worldview. They still have a lens through which they view the world. So this is an atmosphere for us to really engage with each other. I want to emphasize that we'll be moving from chat. We'll be moving from chat to Q&A. So at the bottom of your Zoom page, you'll see the Q&A tab right there. If you have any questions throughout our session, feel free to put it down there and just let me know. And hopefully I'll be able to dig in at the end of our session. I'm only going to be here for a good 30 minutes because I want to be cognizant of your time. But I also want to dig into our topic at hand. So with that being said, we're going to shift to the actual session, but just want to emphasize that you can put your questions and or comments in the Q&A portion. And as I mentioned, this is a virtual platform where we engage people from faith-based, introspective atmosphere, and that's where I come in. My name's Emilio Ariola. I run Pitt's Office of Interfaith Dialogue and Engagement. Been there for a couple years, running that, and made great relationships and just seen the campus grow from the inside out, from the ground up. And I was pulled in to help with this initiative, and throughout the past 3 weeks, we've been doing great sessions on perspective, on looking at our blind spots, on really engaging people who may have different worldviews, but also engaging them in a manner that's sustainable. And today is no different. As you logged on, you probably saw me eating. And I'm a fan of snacks. I'm a fan of grapes. I'm trying to be healthy in this quarantine. And one of the ideas that I always use in regards to food is the idea that it's a bridge to bring people together. And the title of this session is Potlucks or Melting Pots: Bringing Yourself, Seeing Diversity, Tasting Unity, and Enjoying Relationships. That's a long message and a long way of saying how we come together matters. Not just what we do together matters, but how we come together matters. And the subtitle piece of it comes from the Interfaith Youth Corps. If you don't have their contact or their link, I'll be able to give it to you at the end of this. But they're just a conglomerate of different national partners and different universities and institutions that come together to push forth interfaith engagement. But they had this great quote that said, "America has been called a melting pot." What if you brought your best dish to a dinner and you were met at the door with a giant machine that melted it into the same bland goo as everybody else's best dish? That would be a nightmare. On the contrary, the whole point of a potluck is the diversity of dishes. Now, this is really an atmosphere where we can join together to learn about the beauty and necessity in creating, inviting others, and participating in true community potlucks where interfaith diversity and relational unity are seen, shared, and enjoyed. Now, what do I mean by potluck? I was going to actually tell y'all to bring something to eat, but if you have something, definitely enjoy your lunch, enjoy your snack right now. I'm a foodie, so those who know me, I'm usually eating, I'm snacking on something. And right now, as I mentioned, I'm snacking on grapes. Now, the idea of a potluck, that's really good too, is a meal or a party where each of the guests contributes a dish and brings what they have. So it could be something that they spend a lot of time making, could be a snack, whatever it is. We know that it comes from them. And it brings the connotation of unity. That's a state of being united and joined as a whole, despite differences. A melting pot, on the other hand, is a pot, as I mentioned, in which materials are melted and mixed together to create a whole new thing. And the idea of that is not unity, but rather uniformity. It's the idea that we're remaining the same in all cases at all times. And that's not the idea or the attitude or the platform that we want to push, especially when we want to celebrate the idea of civic pluralism. Now, civic pluralism is mainly the premise of that many people coexisting, not all the same, but coexisting in the same place. Dr. Martin Luther King had a great quote where he said, though we may have all come here on different ships, we're all in the same boat now. He said this during the civil rights era when he was galvanizing and bringing different religious leaders together to stand with him for civil rights, because he said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So the idea that he started to really promote and propagate that is well before him, but he really put on the forefront, is the idea of having unity within diversity. And the idea of a potluck harpens on that idea. When we say potlucks rely on the contributions of diverse community members, and if people don't bring anything, the potluck doesn't exist. If people bring the same thing, the potluck is born. And why I'm pushing that and sharing that is because we live in a pluralistic society. As much as we don't like to act like we do, or we see differences, and we may like to say we're all colorblind and we don't see color, or we all believe in the same thing. At the end of the day, many of us don't. Many of us have faiths and worldviews and philosophies that have foundational differences. They may have some similarities here, but they have foundational differences. On the other hand, many of us have similarities that are foundationally similar, but they're different at the top. And the idea is not to melt them all together. When people are coming into dialogue, when you're engaging people, many times our mind trap, which is the detour that our mind takes to really engage somebody, but it usually has a con that's more than the pro. The mind trap that we take is we tell everybody to bring what you have, but put it in the big jar. Come to the table, but everybody's going to eat the same thing. But that's not the beauty of a potluck, because as I mentioned, that pushes uniformity rather than unity. And right now we live in a country that celebrates not only religious diversity, but religious freedom. So my posture when it comes to celebrating religious and faith freedom and community is not just advocating for myself to be able to express who I am and what I believe in, but also the freedom for somebody else to express who they are and what they believe in, rather whether or not I believe in it or not. Because the idea is that it's not a dogma, it's not just my community, it's a potluck. And I know I live in a place that celebrates civic pluralism, not theological pluralism, but just civic pluralism that says, you know what, we're a community and we're gonna come together. And food is a way that we can engage and talk and really be with each other. So what we're gonna say is no matter what you have, whether it's a quick snack and it's some red grapes, which are delicious, I'm gonna snack on them a little later because it stops me from talking, or whether it's a cultural dish, or whether it's something that's deep in tradition of your family, whether I may think it's nasty or not, whether I may not know it or know too much about it, I'm asking you to bring all of yourself. And when you come to meet me. There's a great book that says hospitality comes with a key, and the author is eluding me right now, but she just touches on the fact that from her worldview, she always invites people to her house to eat. And she said hospitality and potlucks, it comes with the key. So it means that you're not simply inviting people to get to know them at work. You're not just inviting them to get to know you at the gym or at some place that isn't central to who you are. You're saying, you know what, come to my house. I want to fellowship with you. I want to engage with you. And I want you to bring something, whatever it is. It could be crackers, it could be water, it could be a big dish of something from your family or your background, but I want you to bring something, and that we're going to join that with the rest of us. We're not going to mix it together and take the differences and the uniqueness out of who you are. We're going to celebrate it. Why? Because we celebrate you. So there's some benefits to potlucks that I want to share with y'all that I think will be really beneficial. Oh, Rosaria Butterfield. Thank you. She's one of my favorite authors. Rosaria Butterfield. She is the author of the book Hospitality Comes with the Key. I encourage you to get that book. Some of the benefits that comes with potlucks versus melting pots is that food is a part of who we are. Food is a part of who we are. Our uniqueness is a part of who we are. When I'm talking about interfaith potlucks, it's a way to introduce religious diversity as another significant part of who we are. You know, but before I was gonna bring grapes, I actually wanted to bring one of my cultural stews from Nigeria called atadindi. You know, it's a red, thick, delicious stew. You can eat it on rice, straight with bread. I can eat it out the pot, which I was doing earlier this morning. And I was gonna bring that, but just as much as my worldview is a part of me, my culture is a part of me, my skin color, my nationality, my gender, my sexuality, where I come from, my neighbor, all of that is a part of me. So when we're asking people to engage with us in dialogue, or when we're coming into a relationship with people, many times we go for the mind trap of saying, you know what, I'm going to see you how I want to see you, instead of saying, come as you are. Why? I want to appreciate all of you. I want to appreciate every layer of you. I want to understand it. So instead of saying, you know what, bring your grapes and we're going to dump it and make a smoothie, I may taste remnants of you in the smoothie, but I won't get the benefit of saying, you know what, that's a good grape, the texture, the juiciness. You know, I was watching a food show prior to this on Netflix. Somebody feed Phil. So that's why I'm in my food mindset. But you don't get to appreciate who people are when you tell them to leave it behind, or you tell them to bring it, but toss it in there, or you tell them that they need a certain caliber of food to come. It's really bring what you have, bring who you are in whatever season you're in, because this is a relationship, and potlucks are simply places where food connects you to people. And number two is it's a way where we can relate with one another. And the driving forward, the idea that we're trying to drive forward is that religious diversity should be actively engaged as a strength. Diversity is a strength. And I know that's a buzzword that is all over universities and institutions. And many times it's just a badge to say, hey, we have a rainbow. Hey, we have different types of food here. But the idea and the reality behind some of those notions is that many people aren't eating the types of food. You may have different types of food in front of you, but you go straight to what you're familiar with. But that only breeds impressionships. It doesn't breed relationships. It's a way for us to impress people with the type of food that we make, or the type of food that we have a palate for, or the type of people that we usually congregate to. But it doesn't allow us to really relate to people and say, you know what, we may have differences, but we both like these grapes. We both appreciate these grapes. I appreciate what it means to you. I appreciate what the lasagna and how you made it. That's a way for us to really relate to each other, in contrast to how we may be different from one another. Number three, it's a way for us to tackle civic problems. Now, obviously, in this country and beyond, and all over the world, there are problems that rise up and bud like weeds. And there are a lot of silos where people are tackling problems by themselves. And many times we recycle wheels. Many times you see generation after generation, or in different areas, people are doing the same thing, but not working together. And there's usually walls that stop people from tackling homelessness, that tackling gentrification, racism, sexism, homophobia, religious oppression, people who try to push dogma. There's a lot of problems going on, and potlucks are a way for us to come together, to connect with each other, to start to be synergistic and work with each other on these problems. Because though we may not connect in all these other areas, the food has helped us see who we are and what we're fighting for. This is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing during the civil rights era, where he was pushing and letting people know, we may be different in a lot of areas, but this is going to affect you. We're connected in our faith. We're connected in our belief, not in the same direction, but it's deep in us. We're all people of worldviews and faith and philosophies, but this is a common problem that connects and affects all of us. So the idea is that this potluck is a way for us to connect and say, you know what? I didn't know you cooked that. I cooked that as well. What else do you do? What else do you have a problem with? What else is going on with you? It opens up the conversation for us to ask more questions. And finally, potlucks help to bring a solid foundation for the storms that are ahead. And I say that because creating a society that values religious diversity, that values potlucks, is crucial to building relationships that strengthen our civic cohesion, not simply when bad things happen. I remember when I came, and it was right after the Tree of Life tragedy that struck the Tree of Life synagogue and killed 11 parishioners, rippled through the Squirrel Hill community and beyond, through many types of communities. And I was engaging with people, and you saw the community that was there, and it was beautiful. But just because I'm in the community, I'm in the religious community, I noticed that it was a very reactive posture. There's nothing wrong with that, because you come together when tragedy strikes, but funerals cannot be the only family reunions. It cannot be the only time where we come together and say, you know what? I need to get to know who you are, because our relationship is worth more than a tragedy. It shines in darkness. Light shines in darkness. But light should also benefit us during the day, not simply the night. It should benefit us while we're walking and moving and enjoying each other, not simply when we're mourning and crying. It is used for both scenarios, but when you talk about building a solid foundation with people, you're talking about relational equity. So when you want to dig into a deep topic, a tough topic with somebody, but they don't know who you are, it's very tough to understand them when you have an assumption that they have the worst intention for you, or they have it about you. So the idea is we need to start investing relational time with people. And that usually can come through food. It can come through potlucks. It can come through you not simply inviting somebody out to hang out, but to get something to eat to your home, coming to their home, and not simply saying we're going to mix all this food together, but we're really going to engage with each other. So I'm going to finish this talk, and we're going to get to the Q&A with some tips that I believe can be really beneficial to just how we're trying to create potlucks during this time. One thing I encourage us to do is invite people and attend when invited. So that means when somebody invites you and you may not be aware of what they believe in, you may not know who they are, you may be a little skeptical, I encourage you to not just bring a part of you, but to bring all of you, to not put what you believe in, which is a part of you, in your back pocket, but to bring all of you. And if you're inviting them, to allow them to bring all of themselves, because you wouldn't want, that's one of the golden rules that we have in our office that just talks about, in many worldviews and religions and philosophies, it says, do as to others as you want them to do unto you. It's different with different nuances, and I won't get into that, but it all harkens on the premise that it's the reciprocity. It's the reciprocity. That's why I advocate for people to express themselves, even though we may not believe the same thing. I want you to be as free as I want myself to be. So when I invite you, bring all of you. Don't hide it. Bring the food that you really want to, not the food that you think will impress us, but the food that you know is central to who you are and something that you want to share, because diversity is more than the differences we like. It's the ones that we don't like. And that shouldn't stop us from really inviting or participating, because we need to invite not just the ones that are being invited all the time, but the ones who may have been marginalized and forgotten. We need to invite them, or we may be that, and we may be seeking somebody to invite us. So we may want to attend a potluck, and I urge us to do that, but to do it in a community atmosphere. The second tip is to eat what's in front of you. This is the land where we're picky eaters and calories, and I'm all for that in terms of being health conscious. But when you're trying to engage with somebody, you don't pick the difference that you like. You don't smell it and say, this smells a little weird. I don't know about this. How long have you cooked it? It looks a little bit weird. No, I eat what's in front of me. That's a a lesson my mother and my family taught me growing up. But I just believe it shows hospitality and saying the time that you took to cook this, what it means to you, this belief. I'm not just going to say, oh, thank you, that's nice, and pass it to somebody. I'm going to engage, because eating is a metaphor for listening. If you haven't realized that through this whole talk, eating is a metaphor for listening and engaging and embracing and understand, because that something that we need to realize as people, we want to be heard, understood, and received before we want to hear, understand, and give. We would rather be received before we want to give ourselves, before we want to receive you. So my thing is, let's be the proactive ones. Let's not be reactive. Finally, you want to present your food and share your food. Not just to explain the content, but to explain the context. What does this food mean to you? Because that's when the stories are shared. While you're eating lasagna or atadidi or aki and saltfish or just different types of food, whatever, injera, because I live with Ethiopian family, a beautiful Ethiopian Muslim family that I absolutely love. And I just ate a lot of injera. And I started to realize that as we present food, dialogue occurs. You share food, you eat it with each other. There's a blessing from eating from the same bowl with people, whether you like the food or not, because you're establishing relationship and you're sharing stories and context that couldn't have been shared otherwise. It would have just been content. And content without context, it can lead to a pretext. That's from Ravi Zachariah. It could lead to you trying to figure out what's the reasoning behind you sharing this. Potlucks allow people to be themselves in community without sacrificing themselves for the community. So I want you to remember that. If we have any questions, I think y'all just been listening because I don't see any Q&A. We have a minute left for questions because I was checking it throughout this time, but I didn't see anything. If you have a question, let me know. We got a couple of minutes left. Let me know and share in the Q&A or the chat what's your favorite food to bring. I told you I'm big on sustaining food, but when I need to snack, you can't go wrong with some grapes. How do you make your potluck not turn into a food fight? That's a great question. I mentioned that prior to it, but food fights many times start with the disposition of the person. So they may say, you know what, I'm here to eat all that I can eat. And that's not the goal. You're not here to gorge yourself. You're here to enjoy food and share it. So food fights start with the wrong disposition. So I would encourage people as they're coming into the potluck, set some community agreements. You need to set the starting line because some people may come with the wrong mindset. And that's just because of how they may have eaten before or assumptions they may have about this. Looking at people the wrong way. That person got more. Why didn't I get this? This food smells. Why aren't they eating more of my food? We need to set the atmosphere with community agreement. So if you go to our website, we have interfaith.pit.edu. We have a tab that says community agreements that sets the atmosphere for our dialogues. Because I can't come with the assumption that everybody is going to be warm-hearted, because some people come from hurt backgrounds, or they may have assumptions, or they may be scared because people have abused their food, their dialogue, their who they are before. So it's setting that atmosphere and letting people know the idea is not to gorge yourself or pick at different things. Enjoy the food, enjoy the people, ask questions, but make sure that we treasure the food, treasure the dialogue, treasure the atmosphere, because this is something that cannot be taken for granted, because we don't have the opportunity for potlucks as often as we would like in this type of society. That is a great question, and I thank y'all for joining me here. Make sure you are inviting people to potlucks. You're attending it. Go to our website if you need any more information. And I mentioned that you can go to our YouTube page, InterFaith Pit at YouTube, and see some of the recordings from past weeks, even this week. And I just want to remind you that don't just go through these hard times. Make sure that you grow through these hard times. I'm going to see y'all next week, Tuesday, 3 p.m., same place. Look out for the email with the link. And with that being said, I appreciate y'all. Look on the slide with some of our finishing information on how to reach us. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to eat my grapes.